Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. One, two, three. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear me? Translators, can you hear me? Look down, please. Hello? Can you hear me? Yes? Loud and clear? All right, excellent.
Cutting ribbon, when do you want to do it? Just before lunch or at 10? At 10, just before lunch. Just before lunch.
Yeah. Yes?
We're going to start on time.
Okay, sure.
It's 9:01. Get it going.
All right, all right.
Is that yours? This is Hello?
Careful.
Oh. Only sign language. You want to tell the grounded or not?
Good morning, everyone. Can you all please take a seat? We're going to begin really shortly. Before we begin, I just want to thank you all for an incredible day yesterday. It was amazing. Despite the chaos of the morning, there were very interesting discussions, great meetings that were happening, and today I think it's going to be equally wonderful. We're going to stick to the schedule today. So we will start with the water panel. If you haven't picked up a revised agenda, please do, because we have changed the times. The water panel will begin from 9 to 10:15, and then the oil one will actually begin right after, so it will be back to back. One last announcement that I'd like to make is about the translation devices. If you can just leave them on your seats after you've used them, just so that we make sure none get lost. Thank you so much. Enjoy the day.
I think this is on. Hello and good morning. We are here today to speak about water. We're happy that you're all here. My name is Virginia Tice, and I'll be the moderator this morning. Joined with me on stage is, well, I'll start at the far end, which will be our speaking order. Mr. Monal Madawi from the Ministry of Water Resources in Baghdad. Mr. Mukhtar Hashimi from the Newcastle Institute for Research on Sustainability. Mr. Andrea Catarossi from Med Engineeria and the Ministry of Water Resources, and Dr. Azam Al-Wash from Nature Iraq.
And AUIS.
AUIS, of course. And I will reiterate what Marianne said. We are highly committed to staying on time, so I will be a very harsh moderator when it comes to that this morning. So we're here today to speak about water, about the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, how the failure to reach a water sharing agreement between the riparian countries of Iraq, Turkey, and Syria has been a decades-long dilemma. But we're also here to talk about how water can be used as an instrument of cooperation rather than conflict. So I'll begin with you, Mr. Madawi. You have worked for decades as an engineer for the Ministry of Irrigation and the Ministry of Water Resources. And you probably know the hydrology of this country better than anyone. You are also a member of the negotiation team for Iraq on reaching a water sharing agreement with Turkey. So perhaps you can give us a little bit of the background of the history of these negotiations and share with us Iraq's position on water sharing.
Okay, that's good.
Where's the presentation?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank the organizer of this firm, of this forum.
Sorry, maybe a little bit louder. Sorry,
Okay.
Manalo. Thank you.
Maybe this?
And you should have one on your.
Just speak louder.
Yeah. Now it's okay.
You got it.
I would like to thank the organizer for this forum to give me the opportunity to present, to present the challenge which we are facing in Iraq regarding the water issues. As you see from this figure shows the delineation of Tigris and Euphrates basins. As you see from the graph from the figure, that the basins of Euphrates and Tigris shared by 5 countries. 4 countries are main countries, which are Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran, and Saudi Arabia also here, also share the basin, but with no contribution to the Euphrates River due to the small precipitation. Let me brief to you the water relation between Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Until 1970s, Iraq was the main user of the water in the 2 basins. The absence of comprehensive agreement among the 3 riparian states on the water sharing did not cause any friction among them, because the water could satisfy the demand of all parties. However, the riparian state of the basin conducted some bilateral or trilateral agreements. As a result, 3 riparian parties facilitate cooperation and development in the region. Problem about the use of water in Euphrates Basin emerged in the 16th of last century, when Turkey initiated to construct the Kiban Dam and set the stage of irrigation development in the upper Euphrates. Turkey determined to construct more irrigation projects. Iraq and Syria complained that Turkey did not notify or calibrate with them in advance about the planned water installation in conformity with customary international law. This figure shows the dams on Euphrates in Turkey and Syria. The red color is for already constructed dams, while the yellow color is the dam under construction now, and the green color for the dam planned in the future. These dams on Turkey, on Tigris team in Turkey, also the same, many dams, but most of these dams are small dams. This also figure shows dams on Greater Zab, Lesser Zab, and Diyala River in Turkey and Iran. Iran also going to build, and built already, dams mainly on Diyala River. Due to the construction of these dams in Turkey, I present figure shows the mean annual inflow of the Euphrates River for the period from 1933 up to year 2011. as you see, the natural inflow coming to inflow coming to Iraq was 30.44 billion metric cube on average per year. This until the construction of the Tabaqa and Kiban Dam. Tabaqa in Syria constructed Tabaqa in 1975, and Turkey constructed Kiban Dam, and you see the mean annual incoming inflow to Iraq dropped to 26.23 billion metric cube on average for this period. During the period after filling the Ataturk Dam, during the period 1992 up to 2007, the mean annual inflow dropped to 19.69. Again, in the period between 2008 and 2011, after some gap and another project in as well as weather change in the region, the average inflow to Iraq dropped to 12.75 billion metric cube. This figure shows the reduction of the incoming inflow to Iraq due to the development in the upstream countries. In Tigris, also the same. During the period until from 1933 up to 1998, the mean annual inflow of the Tigris Basin coming to Iraq is 49.22, and this dropped to 33.1 in the last from 1999 to 2011. This mainly because of climate change and development in Iran. Let me speak about the attempt to reach an agreement between Iraq and Turkey and Syria. Protocol was signed in 1980 between Iraq and Turkey to establish a joint technical committee to study and discuss the water issues. The essential mandate given to the joint technical committee was to determine the method and the procedure that would lead to definition of the reasonable and appropriate amount of water that each country would need for both rivers. In 1983, Syria joined the Joint Technical Committee. Iraq and Syria put forward the idea of sharing the water of Tigris and Euphrates rivers among the three countries, but Turkey considered the task of Joint Technical Committee is to determine the optimal use of water rather than sharing of water. In 1984, Turkey proposed a three-stage plan for the equitable, rational, and optimal use of Euphrates and Tigris Basin transboundary water. Iraq and Syria rejected the three-stage plan approach since they felt it deviated from the original task of Joint Technical Committee. Iraq believed the concept of the optimal use require focus on determining the reasonable and equitable quantity of water each riparian state needs to create substantial plan and implement strategic policies. Although 16 meetings carried by Joint Technical Committee were held during the period between 1981 to 1992, no consensus was made, no agreement achieved. In 1987, two protocols were signed between Turkey and Syria. The first include, during the period of filling Ataturk Dam reservoir and until the final distribution of Euphrates water between the three countries, the Turkish side guaranteed to maintain an annual rate of more than 500 meter cube per second at Syrian-Turkish border.
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Manado, that you've got, your time's up. I'm going to give you one more minute just to wrap up, okay? Maybe we can get to some of these other issues.
Yes,
in the
I will
question
finish.
answer.
The second protocol is a security agreement by which Syria pledged to end the support of PKK. This shows the water used as a weapon in politics. In 1989, an agreement was signed between Syria and Iraq on the sharing of water of Euphrates. According to this agreement, Syria is entitled to a fixed annual percentage of 42 of the Euphrates water crossing the Syrian-Turkish border, while Iraq entitled to 58%. In 1997, UN General Assembly adopted the Convention of the Law of Non-Navigational Use of International Watercourses. It was accepted by 103 states, abstained by 27 states, and rejected by 3 states, Turkey, China, and Burundi. The Convention expresses an obligation of equitable and reasonable utilization of international watercourses. It also expresses obligation of not cause significant harm. The Convention was ratified by 30 states, including Iraq and Syria. It's required 35 countries to ratify the Convention in order to enter the Convention into force.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop there. Hopefully we'll get into some of the other issues in the question and answer session. Thank you so much.
Okay. I want to say that we respect the right of Turkey to develop their water, but not to cause significant harm to the downstream countries. And our ambition is to reach to a comprehensive agreement to fix water allocation, reasonable and equitable water allocation for each riparian country. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So next on our panel, we will have Dr. Mukhtar Hashimi. Mukhtar, you've written extensively on water policy in the region and on Kurdistan. In fact, he's written a 20-page paper for this conference that will be published and made available to the audience by AUIS. So you've written extensively on this topic. And so we'd like to hear your thoughts on Kurdish policy and the implications for Kurdish policy for water sharing.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My talk is about attaining sustainable land and water policy in Kurdistan region of Iraq to achieve water and food security.
I'm sorry, could I also have, maybe, am I deaf? I can't hear anyone this morning. Can you speak just a little louder, please?
Well, it's in the morning and I have to just warm up. If you just bring that for us. Water availability in the Middle East region, including the Kurdistan region, is declining to an absolute level. And water scarcity has been vital in the formation of great civilization along rivers such as Nile, Euphrates, and Tigris. And the people of the region have shown their resilience and adaptation to the harsh climatic conditions throughout the history. However, climatic factors have been influential in regional disparity, disunity, and conflict, as well as the demise of the great civilization. The region suffers from considerable disparity in terms of political, economic, and social aspect, with a nation-state which is attributed to lack of good governance. It's noted that water policies in these countries have allowed for unrestricted use of scarce water resources and characterized by low water tariff and high subsidies and weak demand management policies for the growing demand driven by high population growth. Water reform in the region are driven by the intensifying competition among domestic, agricultural, industrial, and environmental users. Structural approaches should be blended with non-structural options to deal with the multidimensional and interdisciplinary challenges, including capacity development program, to train a new breed of managers who are better able to address a different host of challenges, water allocation or reallocation policy, introducing new pricing policies, drafting new rules and regulations, a new governance system to address groundwater and surface water abstraction, pollution control, and ensuring participation of the communities in the new water governance system. The debate over water and food security shows a degree of confusion, as there are no unique definition for the above term, and all depend on what threats we are looking for. Food security is interlinked to water security, and thus the present world water crisis is essentially a food crisis. Food security has become a major agricultural policy wide. And irrigated agriculture, which is part of the food policy, is energy dependent. It has been stated that global energy policy has had a landmark impact on Kurdistan and its aspiration for independence, as it was subjected to varying degree of policies by different global powers, old and new, and thus there has been no unique policy toward oil resources in Kurdistan. Therefore, energy policy in Kurdistan region has a unique international dimension and has a great bearing on water, food, energy nexus in Kurdistan region. Kurdistan region, which is situated in arid and semi-arid region with semi-Mediterranean climate, is part of the greater Tigris River, as shown by the last presenter. The annual water resources potential for the Kurdistan region amounts to about 30 billion cubic meters. Per capita water availability is more than 7,000 meters squared per person per year, and the water stress condition is defined as 700 meters squared per capita per year. However, this does not show water stress or water scarcity at local levels. Water shortages are experienced in Kurdistan, in different parts of the Kurdistan region. Water shortages are experienced in Kurdistan region. However, a great deal of Kurdistan region's water resources originate from Turkey and Iran, and overall surface water dependency ratio is about 45%, which indicate a high level of potential tensions and conflict. Climatic variability and change is a big factor to be considered. The region has experienced both droughts and water shortages in the past, as in 1999 to 2001, and repeated in 2008. One of the major challenges has been to estimate the annual discharge of River Tigris due to largely yearly fluctuation. Such variation in annual discharge poses a great difficulty in developing an adequate water allocation plan and competing water demand from each sector, as well as ensuring the fair sharing of water among neighboring countries. The uncertainty about potential water resources has been aggravated by water development plans in the neighboring countries, as shown by the last presenter. Kurdistan region, on the other hand, has embarked on massive water resources development plan, as a total of 13 dams are under construction, of which 4 are large dams, and total of 40 dams are planned. The goal is to achieve both water and food security in Kurdistan region. However, water development in Kurdistan region lacks an integrated and holistic approach and marred by data and knowledge uncertainty. Most importantly, a clear vision and an integrated management approach are needed to assess the viability of the development plan in Kurdistan. The legacy of Iraq's modern water and land resources development of irrigated agriculture is still looming in Kurdistan region. The same attitude and appetite for more irrigated land exists among Kurdish policymakers. The Kurdistan region was once considered to be the breadbasket of Iraq due to the presence of fertile and arable lands and vast amount of water resources. However, agricultural sector remains to be less productive, partially due to wars and political and military conditions. Over 4,000 villages were destroyed during the Saddam era. From the onset, food self-sufficiency was a major policy for the KRG. Agricultural development plan was envisaged. However, this plan doomed to failure, and much of the foodstuff is imported from Turkey and Iran. There were three main factors influencing this trend. United Nations Oil for Food program has damaged or killed the agricultural sector in Kurdistan. Secondly, the great rate of urbanization and expansion of real estate, tourism and service sector. Over 800 hotels have been built in these three cities. Expansion and development of lucrative oil sector. Kurdistan region has increased its oil production to 250,000 barrels per day. KRG is increasingly becoming a rentier state and indeed rely upon oil revenues for its economic and social development plan. This has caused an ease in Baghdad and the state of Iraq. Thus, energy policy have a great bearing on agricultural sector. Agriculture takes second place to oil in terms of KRG's policy for development. Food security and self-sufficiency is not only difficult to achieve, but it is rather impossible. Global forces determine food pricing, and homegrown produce might not be economic with traditional agriculture, which is unproductive and wasteful. The politics of irrigation remains central to KRG's effort and aspiration for food security. KRG is attempting to increase agricultural output, to increase food security, and indeed avert major health concern about the increase of cancer-related diseases which are attributed to past military campaigns in the region and imported food. KRG's new agricultural policy is based on facilitating support for Kurdish farmers and increasing production by the use of new methods and technology, such as the improvement of farm equipment and the introduction of transport subsidy. The structural responses are not enough. New laws and legislation might be necessary to reform the agricultural sector. Agrarian reforms in Iraq date back to 1930s, and legal approach has been strengthened in recent years. However, non-structural legislative responses lack a strong capacity development initiative. New policies and laws in water, agriculture, and energy sector should be streamlined. Thus, water, food, energy nexus cannot be achieved if sectoral approach continues. Contradiction and discrepancies within the legal approach will be detrimental to the process of development in Kurdistan.
Okay, and your time is up. I'll give you 1 minute to wrap up.
I would say that the same mistake which has happened in Iraq and elsewhere should not be repeated in Kurdistan. The land and water resources in Kurdistan lacks river basin planning and development. A drive for hydropower production without consideration of drinking and agricultural sector is wrong. Irrigation network plans are lagging behind and non-existent. There is lack of care for environmental consideration. There is lack of consideration for climatic variability. And the last thing I ask, that the Kurdistan regional government should reassess its land and water policy based on holistic and sustainability approach by putting greater emphasis on environmental impact of their development plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent, thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Andrea Catarossi. Andrea, you have worked in Iraq on water issues for over 10 years on projects up and down the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You are now currently working with the Ministry of Water Resources in Baghdad on a strategy for the management of land and water resources for Iraq, including Kurdistan, for the next 20 years. So I'd like you to say a bit about this strategy and briefly tell us, what does the future of Iraq in water look like?
Thank you. Thank you, Virginia. I hope that you can hear me, first of all. Sorry, my voice is a little down. But thank you all for being here and for this opportunity. So first of all, maybe I should tell something about Tuileries. I guess that's the question. And this is a terrible acronym for a project that is a strategy for water and land resources management for the next 20 years for Iraq. This is a project that has been wanted very strongly by the Minister of Water Resources and by the government of Iraq. And it will provide a plan for how to spend, invest money in the water sector for the next 20 years. And it is for the entire country, not just for Baghdad, but also for KRG, for the Kurdistan region. Now, Tuileries has taken a lot of work. It's the work and the effort of more than 100 people working for several years. And now it's finally nearly over. Tuileries provides a great opportunity. One of the many, it is about information. Now, over time, over my experience in working with the ministry and the many meetings that I have been in, the great question was always, can I trust this information? Is it true that Iraq is getting so much water from Turkey? Or what is the water quality that Iraq has available? So these are great questions. And of course, the problem is that there are many, many numbers, many informations out there. Tuileries has spent a great deal of effort in trying to prove and verify and validate basic information, such as how much water Iraq is getting, how much water is flowing through Iraq, what is the quality of the water is coming in, what is going to happen in the future, in the present. Now, this is obviously not just important because if these informations are true and valid, gives credibility to the plan we are proposing. But it's because also informations and trusting such information is building trust among the very countries that are called to negotiate about water. So if I trust information, then maybe I trust that whatever I'm suggesting is true. So this is the first step, I guess, in creating cooperation among the countries that are working on the water here. So this is a wealth of information, a wealth that Iraq now has available. I'll give you an example of what happened to me personally. A few months ago, no more than a few months ago, I was in Erbil discussing with the Minister of Water in Baghdad, the Minister of Water in Kurdistan, about the development of the Greater Zab, the big dams that are planned for the last undammed river you have in Iraq. Now, KRG, the Kurdistan region, has developed a plan for developments that is based on old information. And so one of the purposes of my meeting with the ministry here was to tell them that whatever you have, whatever you're using for basing your plans, it's old. Now, we spent millions of dollars and many, many months, many, many years and efforts in preparing better information. Now, the problem, if we continue following this path, it's serious. Of course, there are so many dams around the world that have been built that are for nothing, are being run empty. They never pay themselves back. And this is a problem, of course. So one thing I would like to say here is that even without looking outside Iraq, there is a need for coordination inside Iraq. And this is the first example. Now, this issue, it's a simple one. Of course, there is just a little bit of lack of coordination between two ministries, the one in Baghdad, the one in Erbil. The solution is simple. Just sharing information, just making sure that everything is accessible. And the blame or the fault, if there is, it goes both ways. It's not like the fault of Erbil or the fault of Baghdad. It's both ways. So what are the challenges, really? I would like to say, Mr. Munado has been presenting issues outside Iraq, how much water we are getting and what's going to be the future. Now, that's one side of the problem. The other real side of the problem I've been looking at, it is what's happening in Iraq. The fault is not all of the neighboring countries. Iraq has something that has to be working very seriously. And indeed, this country has taken seriously the water issue during the last several years. I've seen a lot of efforts, new irrigation projects being developed with modern technology, efforts in studying and understanding better what's going on. Tuileries is the perfect example. I mean, Tuileries is probably the most challenging and most serious effort that this government is implementing in planning, in showing the other countries that the water issue is being taken very seriously. And this is obvious. Why? What it comes out of very simple information being shared, it is that if the water issue is not taken seriously, Iraq has no more than 7 to 10 years before it runs out of fresh water. I mean, whatever is your need for water will not be met in the next 7 to 10 years if you don't take things seriously. Luckily, you are. And so here is other problems, like you've heard. UN recent studies are showing that Iraq is losing agricultural land at an incredible rate. 2% of the agricultural land is lost every year to the desert. This is incredible. So needs for actions are required. Iraq has about 70,000 square kilometers of arable land, of land available for agriculture. And today, nearly 77% of this land, so a good proportion of this, is being cultivated. The problem is that not even half of this land is being organized and maintained and managed by the government. So water losses are very, very large. We believe the numbers or not, but the problem is that of whatever water, which is more than 80% of the water you're receiving in Iraq and you have in Iraq, is going to agriculture. 70% of that water is lost, never gets to the target, 70%. So it's a huge amount of water. So where are the challenges and what are the proposals that we are making in this plan, in this investment plan? Some are incredible shift over historical ways of investing money and managing water. I'll name few. For the many past year, Iraq has invested a lot of money, a lot of effort in building dams. Now, this is no longer, it's proven, no longer is the way ahead of you. This is not anymore the way that you should invest your money. The money should be invested in modernizing agriculture. This has now been proven. It's many, many folds. Your return of your investments are going to be better off put into agriculture and modernizations of that than in new dams. There are shifts also in the way you manage the water. For those of you that understand and know Iraq, the Tartar Lake, this is the largest lake you have in Iraq, no longer will be used for storing water, for managing water for agriculture in the future. There is no water to fill this lake in the future. This is an incredible shift over the last 30, 40 years of planning and managing. I'll name a few more. Now, Iraq is an oil-rich country, and to extract oil in Iraq, you need to reinject water into the oil fields. This is not little water you need. It comes to 3-5% of your entire water that you need to reinject to extract oil. Now, in Tuileries, to make sure that you understand how seriously the government is taking these steps in trying to save water, we are trying to understand if most of this water can be taken not from the water bodies of the rivers, but from the sea and from the drains, so to use alternative sources. This is a great investment that you need to do. The Common Seawater Facility that all these oil companies are building in the south cost billions of dollars to be built. And it's a must, but it's not enough. So another important steps, probably the key important steps that this strategy is putting forth, it's something that maybe neighboring countries will be interested in understanding. Iraq does not have a plan to develop new land. The plan, serious, is to actually modernize and fix the existing land. The 77% I told you before, this is a lot of land, many of which needs to be modernized. This is a huge investment. Modernizing agriculture is not cheap. What you used to spend today, now you need to spend more than 3 times as much to actually go from traditional agriculture to modern agriculture. This is a lot of money, but it's a must. You cannot escape that. Now, of course, it all seems simple, but unfortunately, because also there are water reductions from neighboring countries, the problem is not only with Iraq. We have to compromise to achieve the goals of 2035 of development for the country. We have to compromise. And unfortunately, some of the compromises come to great expenses to the environment. This is a problem.
And I'm sorry, Andrea, I'm just going to give you 1 minute to wrap up.
Right, okay. And so where are the problems? The problem is that you will not be able probably to develop 100% of your marshes in the south, which is so critically important. Other issues are with maintaining water quality standards, acceptable water quality standards all throughout Iraq. Now, for those of you that sees and knows about Basra, that's a perfect example of what's going to happen if you cannot maintain water quality. And you cannot if you cannot negotiate with the neighboring countries. So that's my bottom line. My bottom line really is that Iraq is seriously taking into considerations what to do with the water problems. Is not avoiding the problem, has a serious plan for that. But it cannot do it alone. The problem is not, definitely is in Iraq, but definitely needs help and cooperation with neighboring countries. It's not asking much, but time is the essence, and coordination is utmost important. So that's what I would like to say.
Excellent, thank you. Lost my thing here. Excellent, thank you so much, Andrea. Next on our panel will be Dr. Azam Alwash. Ooh, my timer's going off. See, I'm serious about keeping time.
You're a tough moderator.
And it's not letting me clue. So next on the panel is Dr. Azam Alwash, the founder and president of Nature Iraq. Azam, you are known for your tremendous environmental work in Iraq, particularly your work in helping save the Mesopotamian marshlands of southern Iraq, and also bringing worldwide attention to these issues. You were also recognized in 2013 by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the 100 global leading thinkers. And so, as a global leading thinker, what do you think? We've heard anyone who, unfortunately, Mr. Minato got cut off, but this is a decades-long debate over water sharing of the Tigris and Euphrates. These have been ongoing negotiations, that there's never been a solution and a robust agreement on this. It's complicated. There are the water, energy, security, food nexus, as Mukhtar talked about. Iraq can't do it alone, as Andrea talked about. So what are your ideas on how to move forward on this issue?
Thanks, Virginia. I'm going to change plans here. We're going to wing it. Yesterday and today, we heard a lot about what divides us. Turks, Arabs, Kurds, Shia, Sunni. I think we have an opportunity to use water as something that unites us. And before I start, I want you to all imagine the map of Iraq in your head and think about what southern Iraq is. Geology teaches us that southern Iraq is a sedimentary plain. Think about that expression. The soil of southern Iraq starts its journey in the mountains of Kurdistan, larger Kurdistan. It's carried by the water of the Tigris and Euphrates down to southern Iraq where it's sedimented. The ecology, the geology, the biology connects us. It precedes humanity. It precedes Kurds, Arabs. We are united by the waters of the Tigris and Euphrates and by the soils of Kurdistan. In fact, if we are what we eat, we're all Kurds, but that's a side story. In fact, actually thinking about that, we're all probably global citizens since the majority of the stuff that we eat here today is probably produced somewhere else. That is something that I want my Arab friends, where I grew up in southern Iraq, you heard the marshes. Most of you have not seen the marshes. I grew up on the marshes. It's an incredible water world. It is, in fact, the birthplace of civilizations, ladies and gentlemen. It is where writing was invented, by the way, as an instrument to keep track of debts. So the original Sumerians were bankers, apparently. It is where the wheel was invented. It's where Abraham was born. And so, again, we're connected, where there's an underlying geology, biology, ecology, and then overlaid with this human connectivity. And this is not just for Iraq. Of course, there's Iran, there's Syria, there's Kurdistan. So, Iraq is where agriculture was developed. Well, the Sumerian method of agriculture lasted 7,000, 8,000 years because, in fact, the floods that come in just about now, every year, the floods bring in the water and bring with it the soil. And what the floods do, of course, they destroy cities, but what they do is actually renew the farmland, the vitality of the farmlands of southern Iraq. They wash away the sabkha, the salt that is generated from the irrigation method, the Sumerian irrigation method, but more importantly, it deposits a new layer of silt and clay every year. The Iraqi farmer, the Sumerian farmer, the Babylonian farmer did not need fertilization. There was a natural fertilization by the flood cycle. Well, of course, that also developed the Sumerian method of irrigation, which has no value for the water. I think Mukhtar talked about that, and Andrea talked about that a little bit. And so the culture of the farming in this region has not caught up with the new reality of the dams. By the way, I think we're going to start a new movement called Dam the Dam movement. I will take applications. And it's interesting what Andrea said, that dams don't make any more economical sense. You know, they're viewed as the renewable source, and I'm going sideways, but let me go back to the irrigation. 50% of the water of Iraq is being lost. Well, there's an opportunity, guys. Instead of burning the gas down in the south, and I don't know how many of you have gone down to the south, I go to the south quite a lot. And we burn something like $100 million worth of gas every day. Well, how about converting that gas into plastic pipes? In Iraqi government, why don't you invest $2 billion, build a petrochemical plant, and convert that gas that you're wasting into plastic pipes? And you know what? Not only give it to the Iraqi farmer for free, but give it to the Syrian farmer, the Turkish farmer, the Iranian farmer, not because we love them, but because we love ourselves. Here is the problem. All the farmers in the region are using the Sumerian method of irrigation, which, in fact, what's happening is that there is a lot of drainage water that is salty, that's full of pesticides, that's full of nutrients, and it's fed back into the river. So, consequently, the farmer in Basra is literally dealing with this drainage of the entire basin. So, government of Baghdad, please help modernize irrigation, not only in Iraq, but modernize irrigation in Turkey and Iran, not because you love them, again, because you love your Iraqi farmer. Drip irrigation, if we save 50%, there's no war, there's no problem. It's easy, of course, in theory. How do you apply it? Mr. Zibari. There are other methods. There are others. I mean, okay, Turkey is building the GA project. They say they want energy. Fabulous. Well, when you transport electricity from the mountains of Kurdistan all the way to Istanbul where you need it, you're losing 20, 30%. Why don't we buy this electricity to Iraq? There's going to be a loss on 5, 10%. All right? So there's more income to Turkey. And you know what? We'll buy it with gas that they can transport all the way to Istanbul and generate electricity closer to Istanbul where they need it. What did that do? That basically created water for Iraq because for Turkey to generate electricity, it has to pass the water through the hydroelectric turbines, and that brings water as a byproduct. Notice, we did not buy water for petroleum. We bought electricity for petroleum. We changed the dialogue from whose water this is, or in fact, no parliament in Iraq is ever going to approve a treaty where we're buying water for petroleum. But we can definitely buy electricity. We bypassed the step of whose water this is, and we created connectivity by trade. But more importantly, we will begin the process of building the pieces. Now, other ideas are available. Instead of repairing Mosul Dam, and you're not going to like this, but instead of repairing Mosul Dam and spend $3 billion on an experiment that I know will fail, but it's your money, why don't we decommission Mosul Dam and use that money to store water in Turkey? Evaporation losses will make up for the difference. I can calculate it for you. We have scientists. But we can. The idea here is we need to start thinking outside the box. There are these ideas. I know people are going to be laughing here, but I'll remind you, 10 years ago when I was talking about restoring the marshes, people were also laughing. Guess what? I'm having the last laugh. How much more time do I have?
3-4 minutes, maybe.
All right, great. And so instead of spending $3 billion on an experiment, let's cooperate with Turkey on storing Iraqi water there, or the water that's going to come to us, store it there. You can make the difference in evaporation losses. There are other ideas that we can work on. The problem is the trust that Andrea was talking about. How do you reach an agreement with Turkey in Iraq and Iran? There is no trust. So we need to create economic models that the scientists in Turkey, the scientists in Iraq can trust, so that policymakers, when it comes time to negotiation, can have the tools that are verified by both sides, by scientists from both sides, that this is in fact represents reality, and that you can use to reach agreements. This is our role here in the American University. And this is where I want to go next with the American University, with the Twin Rivers Institute, with the Blue Crescent Initiative. We need to create connective tissue between academics in Iran, in Syria, in Iraq, and Turkey to work together on economic models that can be used to evaluate these crazy ideas. And there are other ideas. I mean, if you can give me, say, 20 minutes, I can expound. But the point is, we need to change the dialogue in the region from I'll close that, from whose water this is to how can we cooperate. If there is a political will, there is a way. We can come up with ideas that increase trade. And think about it. Trade can potentially lead to a borderless Middle East. Okay, laugh, but let's think about it. How many of you have gone to Ibrahim al-Khalil and seen the trucks? 10 kilometers of trucks, 5 abreast, waiting for 2-3 weeks. This is money. This is costing the Iraqi consumer money. If we can increase the trade, somehow go to Turkey and negotiate with Turkey, not only on water, but on trade and energy and all other stuff. And by the way, on a side issue, the foreign minister yesterday was speaking about the same things. So it's like, I thought that the hardest sell is going to be in Ankara. Guess what? The hardest sell is going to be in Baghdad. But that's the idea here. If we can go to Turkey and negotiate on water only, we're going to lose. We're not going to be able to win. But if we go to Turkey and negotiate on water, electricity, energy, trade, there's a good chance that we can come up with a friendship treaty that regulates everything. The point is we need to increase trade. And with increased trade, there is going to be less tension. In fact, we could possibly create a common market. A blue crescent market, a green crescent market. It happened in 1957 in Europe after 2 world wars that they created a common market. What? All of a sudden the British fell in love with German cuisine? Hey, it's economy, but in the eternal words of the eternal Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. I think the economy and unifying trade and increasing trade in the region is going to eventually lead to solving the water issues, the trade issues, the Kurdish problem maybe. Maybe we can live all together in peace by using water and trade as a way to the future. And I'll thank you.
Great, thank you. So now that Dr. Zam has solved the world's problems, let's take a few questions. I have a few of my own, and then we'll open it up. Sorry if you can just be patient. First, I'd like to give Mr. Minato, I know you got cut off, so I would like you very quickly to talk about some of the main issues of why an agreement thus far has not been reached between Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. What were some of the main holdups, the main problems?
Yes, the main points of difference between Iraq and Syria from one side and Turkey,
yes,
another side. Turkey consider Euphrates and Tigris basins as one basin, single basin, while Iraq and Syria consider Tigris independent from Euphrates basin due to the fact that there is natural boundaries and geographical boundary between two basins.
okay.
Another point is that thousands of years, inhabitants of the Mesopotamians developed the irrigation system in Iraq. And this create a acquired right to Iraq, vested right to Iraq to use the water. Turkey refused this concept. Another thing, Turkey did not consider the Euphrates and Tigris as international rivers. They consider it as a transboundary rivers, and therefore Turkey refused to consider the water crossing the boundary as a shared water. I want to say here that according to the report of 1993 years of International Law Commission, which is United Nations organization, they state that there is no substantial difference between the term of transboundary rivers and the term of international water course. Hence, no difference legal effect due to the use of this expression. So it's just matter of terminology. So this is the main point which difference between during negotiation.
Right.
But I want just to say that if before 1960 the use of water by Turkey is only 2%, and Syria only 10%, and Iraq used at that time 60% of the mean annual inflow of the Euphrates. And if GAP implemented in Turkey and Syria implement its plan for development, then Iraq will receive only 25% of the Euphrates inflow. And this is very associated with bad quality because most of this inflow is backwater inflow, backwater from irrigation inflow of Syrians and Turks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Can I follow up on Manadal? What you heard is, okay, this is our right. This is our historic right. It's our international right. That's what I heard. It reminds me of the Palestinian problem, or even the Kurdish problem. Right? International law is great, but it only applied on the weak. In this case, Iraq is the weak. So we can continue demanding our international right and die in the process. Or we can compromise. I literally heard once the Deputy Minister of Water Resources, Ali Farhan, stand up and say, Iraq needs 98 billion cubic meters of water. I mean, come on, give me a break. Okay, it's a negotiation position. Fine, I understand. But guys, there's an American, I mean, okay, so Mexico won 2 cases against the United States for the Colorado River. Right? Guess what? They still haven't gotten a drop of water into the Gulf of Mexico. Who's the strong in this case? It's America. All right, who's the strong in this case? It's NATO. Turkey is NATO. You want to go on another war? No thanks. Right? So what do? You complain, you stand up. I mean, let's move a little bit. Okay, fine. I'm not saying don't demand. Demand it, but come up with ideas that can bypass this question. Let's stop talking about whose water this is, and let's find ways to compromise. Let's find ways to reach a solution. All right, demand it, great. But come up with ideas that can solve the problem and move the ball forward.
Okay, with that, I think, Mukhtar, if you'd like to.
I'd like to add that really the looming crisis, both water and energy,
I'm sorry, can you speak up just a
looming
bit?
water crisis
Okay.
cannot be solved by bilateral agreement. There should be a regional planning. And of course, we need mechanisms for that. We need an institutional design and administratively, and the four countries should come together. So they should do their planning together. I think that is the essence. But the other thing is that at the moment, the UNDP had initiated in 2008.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Why everybody can't hear me?
Very soft-spoken. Maybe I'm just loud.
I have got some sore throat. I do apologize. I don't want to shout. But what I'm saying, the bilateral agreements cannot solve the problem.
Sure.
We need regional planning,
Yes.
so a development plan, a regional development plan, but that needs mechanism. The four countries should come together and set up an institution to deal with this matter independently, negotiated. The Nile Basin Initiative, for example, was initiated for the 10 riparian countries for the Nile Basin. So we need to do something similar for Euphrates and Tigris River here. The other thing is that following Andrea's call for more agricultural modernization, and this happened in Iran, it means more water use. We need water demand management. We don't need expansion of existing agricultural sector. And the other thing that was postulated by Azam in a very romantic way is actually is happening. Virtual water trading. I mean, we import water by buying foods from other countries. So if we include virtual water trading in our development plans, then the politicians are not sensitive about food self-sufficiency and the flagship policies, which doesn't work, and indeed leads to this massive developmental work, which is waste of money and waste of natural resources.
Okay.
So really, we need to emphasize the collaboration between the four countries in a legal approach, an institutional design that deal with the new realities.
Okay. And sorry, Mr. Munada, I'd like to give Andrea an opportunity to respond briefly, and then we'll move on to you.
Okay. Well, first I guess to the point of creating an institution, creating a regional process. Of course, this is definitely where we should go. But honestly, we also need to realize that there is a reality right now that we cannot avoid. So it's difficult talks, it's difficult plans. In the process, ultimately, there must be some sort of regional cooperation, coordinations, well planned, all together. But in the meantime, there are, of course, situations like Syria now. It's difficult to talk when a country is under basically such a disrepair. But there are opportunities. Iraq now is talking well with Iran, and in ways that it couldn't do before, and with Turkey. And so I guess that in the meantime, this process has to be taken whatever is the opportunity. So my point is, yes, we need to aim at a regional coordination and cooperation all together a Tigris Euphrates basin management, but in the meanwhile, that sounds a little complicated. I also would like to say maybe a statement about using water for agriculture in the future. I mean, in the plan, and this is in the plan for Iraq, the expansion, so there is no expansions of agriculture in terms of new land being cultivated, but definitely there is a cultivation of existing land in a more efficient way. Iraq, unfortunately, will have less water for agriculture. Today, more or less 40 billion, 80% of what is available today goes into irrigation. In the future, only 30 will go. So with much less water, we can cultivate the same amount of land. This is because we need to apply modern irrigations, more efficient. That's definitely the major challenge for a country that needs legal and institutional changes.
But it will
before
also reduce drainage, Andrea. It
But
will also reduce
farmers-
drainage. So the
farmers control how much water they use, and if they have more water, they cultivate more lands, and they can buy or rent extra. I mean, this is from our experience in Iran and the rest of the world. If you don't have demand management, if you just like use modernization of your agricultural sector, you'll use more water, and more land will be developed.
Okay, and real quick, just and then
I
I'd like to
just
open
want
it
to
up.
comment on Mr. Azam.
I love you too.
I just want to say that the sovereignty of the upstream countries, upstream riparian countries, on the water is not absolute. According to the international law, it's limited. That's not causing harm to the downstream
Wallahi, I
countries.
understand.
Excuse me. And this, it's not like a land. They have the sovereignty on the land, okay, but on the water, because it's moving element, so it may cause harm for the riparian, for the downstream countries. So in this case, I understand you that because they are strong and they are upstream, they can do anything. No. According to international law, their sovereignty is limited, not absolute. That's all.
Okay, great. Well, let's try to open it up to some questions. Dr. Saba, if you'd like to speak first. And is there a microphone for her? A microphone here, please.
Good morning, all. Thank you for being here. This is a very important issue for all of us. I would like to mention something that is water is very important and time is essence for us. I'm talking about Kurdistan and Iraq in general. There is a study, NASA did it, and they say in the Middle East, by year 2050, many countries, including Iraq, is going to be, including Kurdistan, it's going to be desert. And the reason is, they say 70%, it's because of the wells that has been dug everywhere. 20% is for misuse, and I thought it's more, but that is the study says. So in Kurdistan especially, we have been digging wells and using it for agriculture. This should change. This is ridiculous. This water is more important maybe than oil. Soon we might find out this is going to happen. And it might be even more expensive, even by now.
It is now.
It is now. See?
A liter of water is
It's more expensive than...
a liter of gasoline, so.
Which country?
Yes.
Here.
So, talking about the dams, that I agree, for environmental point of view, it's not a good idea. But in Kurdistan, I think we need to have smaller dams, not the dams that you are talking about, and using it. It is like harvesting water and using it for the agriculture that we are having, which is also not managed well. It is like locals, and it is we need to have a good management, even for the one that they do for themselves. Like there are so many orchards that has been established, and they use water from the wells. I think this should not be the case. So I am with having some dams, but it has to be managed. I don't know if it's a comment or a question.
Well, it brings up a number of issues that have been touched upon today, of Andrea's comments about the importance of good data and understanding what the situation is, and NASA's data and other people's data, Swillery's data collection. Swillery's current project has been able to provide the most comprehensive understanding of the water situation, the hydrological regime, water usage, because without that data, you don't know how to move forward. You don't know how to manage that water unless you know what's going on. So that's an excellent point. And then, of course, it also touches on Mukhtar's point, which he maybe would want to talk about the current disjointed, fractured management and regulation of things like wells and of our water that needs to change. Mukhtar, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I give an example of the Khewata Dam, which is planned, is going ahead. Now, Dukan Sat depends on Khewata's inflow, and it produces much of electricity for the region. Now, you're diverting much of the water to Sulaimani's drinking habit, which is 700 liters per person per day, twice as much as Paris and 3 times as much as Berlin, for example, water usage in the city. Now, what we are asking for, that in a valley you're building 3 dams, like a cascade of dams are built, without an integrated plan. You don't have an environmental impact assessment for the dams of what is going to be their effect on downstream.
Right, okay.
And the other important issue is, in future, Iraq, rest of Iraq is also there downstream to Kurdistan. You need to sort out the water allocation downstream of these rivers. So really, it will be a big internal problem, as Andrea has suggested as well.
Okay,
so
great. So
we
I'd like
want
to
integrated planning. This is what I'm asking.
leave room for a few more questions. Well, let's go a few rows back, and then we'll bring it back to the front. Sorry. To this gentleman right here.
Good morning to you. This is Dr. Dilan Majid Rustam from Korea University. Just referring to a 2,000 years old saying from a Greek philosopher, he says, the law is the will of the strongest. Coming to you, Dr. Azam, about the law, and we shouldn't spend our time on it. So at the end, it will be just the will of the strongest. I'm coming to the questions of the Kurds in this issue, and I remember reading an article in 1996 about drowning the Kurdish heritage. It was a campaign about Hassan Cave dam building in Turkey, and we used to do a demonstration against that dam with the Swiss company and Turkish companies, let's say, cooperation. What we come to the speech yesterday about the borders among the countries in the Middle East that become borderless, but we are coming to the question, what will be the role of the Kurds when the water is sourcing from the Kurdish land anywhere you look at it? Whether it's from Iran, whether it's from Turkey, whether it's from Iraq or Syria, the water source of the Middle East coming up from the Kurdish land. Are we, as a Kurds, investing our time on the oil in the right direction, do you think? Thank you.
Thank you. Any takers?
Well, I mean, I also asked the question yesterday about the Greater Kurdistan. We are not talking about the Greater Kurdistan because that is not a reality. It's not on the map. At the moment, the Kurdish regional government or the Kurdistan region of Iraq is on the map, and therefore that is why we are concentrating on the Kurdistan region. Well, the future, yes, of course, yes. I mean,
okay. Well, yeah. Sorry. Are you? Are you? Was that an answer? I couldn't really hear. Yes.
I mean,
Azam, would you like to jump in?
I mean, unfortunately, the Greater Kurdistan is yet to happen. I mean, Hassan Cave, you know what we did for Hassan in 2008? Dinsha Iraq participated through BirdLife International to try to stop. Actually, we did stop the German funding. It was German, Swiss, and Austrian, and we actually succeeded in cutting off the funding for Aliso Dam. We celebrated. Unfortunately, we won a battle, but we lost the war because meanwhile, Turkey went around and got funding and continued building, and it's going to be finished this summer. They're going to be filling it. In fact, last April, was it September? We did a flotilla from Hassan Cave all the way to the marshes to try to demonstrate the connectivity of the Tigris for the region.
And sorry, Azam, I'm going to have to cut you short because I'd really like to take at least one more question. Let's go back here. The gentleman right here.
Over there.
Mike, please.
The Minister of Water Resources of Kurdistan wants to ask a question. Former minister.
Sorry, I'm completely blind to this side. I'm so sorry. If maybe he's quick and you're quick, we can have...
It is. It's a quick question. Fanar Haddad, Middle East Institute, Singapore. Forgive my ignorance. Quick question. I wanted to know if anyone can point to a successful example of multilateral management of shared water resources.
Danube and Nile.
Great. Next question.
Nile? The Nile you'd point to as a successful one?
Well, it was successful for a while, and it'll just continue.
Let's stick with Europe.
Danube. Great.
And therefore, we need a unified trading bloc because the Nile doesn't have it. Europe has it. So we need a borderless Middle East so that we don't have future problems.
Don't add on. We were so short and pithy. Mike, over here, please. And I really do think this will have to be the last question.
Thank you very much. Can I speak my language, Kurdish, please?
Also talking several
times. Thank you. برزان زور بكالك بو أو ديبتي جمعان ليبو من ما ويشتيك بليم برادران.
Okay, this is probably to Mukhtar.
I can talk English, don't worry. Don't worry, Mr. Azam.
We're just looking around.
About the water resource management, we always talk about the Turkey, Iran, Syrian project who affected the Iraq and Kurdistan region negatively. But I would like to highlight the importance of the integrated water resource management inside the Kurdistan region and Iraq. We didn't do what's supposed to do in our region and Iraq. We didn't put the water as the first or second priority to this moment in Iraq and Kurdistan region.
Right.
We don't have water law. We don't have any water pricing. We don't have any integrated, not only water resource management, our natural resource management. And I ask you to ask the politicians to pay attention to the water as a first priority from now on up. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry if I know everyone's going to be so angry with me, but one last question if it's very, very quick. Okay, he's given up. All right. Thank you so much. Unless you have last thoughts.
Maybe just a last thought over this statement. So for the water resources management, so as you heard, it's being done. Priority is being put on water. But most importantly, very recently, we started discussions with the central government to actually do a serious strategy for reforming the legislation and the institutional components of the water sector. So hopefully, with all of this in place, then it comes to implementations, obviously, very seriously, in achieving whatever goals you are discussing here, which is critical. So that's to let you know that this is happening. So it's hopefully will happen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
What is that?
Thank you very much to our first group of panelists for this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed to the next panel immediately, and then we will have a break after the next panel. We will proceed to the next panel immediately, and then we will have a break after the next panel. Our next panel is titled Iraq Oil Policy and moderated by Ms. Rachel Brunson, with our panelists Michael Howard, Luay Al-Khatib, Murad Ozchalak, and Bilal Wahab.
Excuse me, Rachel. Hi, I'm Jeffrey. How are you?
If I can ask everyone to go ahead and get seated, we're going to start the panel momentarily. Thank you.
I might send you some questions from Twitter. If you see like Marion or Bajar come and hand you a piece of paper, it's a question from Twitter. And also, a lot of the students have been complaining that they're not.
Yeah, I spoke to your colleague about it. Sorry, unless you want to. Okay, let's go ahead and if everyone can go ahead and get seated, we're going to start the second panel on oil policy and the domestic and regional implications.
Sorry?
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. If I can ask you to find your seats, that would be terrific.
Go over there. Is that the speeches are from
If you can do it from here, it's better.
Süleyman Bey.
Standing up and
İnşallah her şey yerinde.
İyidir valla. İdare
Hiç, sıkıntı yok inşallah kaldığınız yer. Dün akşamı beğendiniz mi?
İyi, çok
Müzikleri
güzel.
beğendiniz.
Aa,
Çok güzel.
güzel.
Sangarlar hepsi kardeş. Hepsi kardeş. Hepsi kardeş. Onlar çocukken babaları onların müziklerini öğretti. Hepsi öyle müzisyen çıktılar.
Okay, let's go ahead and get find your seats. I'm going to get started. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to the conveners for hosting us. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the second panel on oil policy. I think I'm going to ask Suli's staff to help me get everybody back to their seats. You can continue your conversations out in the hall. I want to thank the conveners for organizing the session on oil directly after the water panel. For most conversations happening around the globe, there's the recognition that energy, agriculture, and water are closely tied, and we can't think of them separately anymore. So to have this panel immediately following the last panel, I think was clever, and I'm appreciative of that. I'm also appreciative of the organizers for having us today. So today's conversation, I can't think of...
Oil and water don't mix, by the way.
What?
Oil and water don't mix.
They don't mix, but that's why we're subsequent to them. Let me introduce the panel to you, and we'll get right to it. We are delighted to have Michael Howard with us today. As many of you know, he's the senior advisor to Minister Ashdi Harami, the Minister of Natural Resources here in the KRG. He's going to kick off our conversation today to give us an update on where the thinking is among the minister and the ministry about the energy issues which are shaping politics here today and will, I think, over time shape the future direction of Iraq's policy in the region. We're then going to turn to Louis Al-Khatib. Louis, as many of you know, has 2 decades of work in the energy sector. He is the founder and director of Iraq's Energy Institute. He is a special advisor to the Parliament on energy issues, and he will follow up Michael's comments from an update from Baghdad with how this is being viewed there. We're then going to, you're out of order in your seating, we're then going to turn to Bilal Wahab, who most of you know here. He's a lecturer at AUIS. And he's a faculty fellow here, and we're delighted to have such in-house expertise. Bilal, good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a hometown hero, clearly. Yes. And then the final speaker will be Ambassador Murat Urshlik, who many of you know as the former Turkish ambassador to Baghdad on energy issues. He was also the head of the cabinet for President Özal in Turkey. So we're just delighted, Özal, to have you here. So I think we're going to get a terrific view on what's happening today here within Iraq, with Iraq-Turkish relations. We couldn't ask for anyone better. So Michael, let me turn it over to you, and we'll kick it off.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank the American University of Iraq and Sulaimani for inviting me to this excellent conference. I was following it on streaming yesterday. It was very productive, and I hope we get to see many more of these in Kurdistan. And it's always a great pleasure to be here in Sulaimani, particularly, and today is a special day. It marks the uprising in March the 5th, 1991. It's sadly not often that you hear good news out of Iraq, but today I want to talk to you about the opportunities and advantages created by the recently discovered energy resources in the Kurdistan region. And I believe these resources and those of the rest of Iraq will play an important role in the future energy plans of Iraq, neighbors such as Turkey and Iran, and Europe. And it's a scenario that can create a win-win situation for governments and citizens alike along the energy chain. So over the last 7 years, the Kurdistan region has been emerging as an important geopolitical partner in the stability and security of our neighborhood. And the need to maintain balanced and friendly relations with all of Iraq's neighbors is recognized by leaders in the region here, and has enabled the region actually to move forward, particularly with development of the hydrocarbon resources. And these are resources, and they're world-class resources of oil and gas, and resources that Iraq never knew it had. And the Kurdistan region is already in a process of rapid transition, let's say, and a positive transition to develop those natural resources. So as a result of all this, the KRG's contribution to Iraq's export targets through the country's northern energy corridor to Turkey and beyond can and will be significant at a time of increased international tension. With world-class reserves of oil and gas, it's seen as one of the few remaining conventional oil and gas frontiers on Earth, and it's become one of the most actively explored hydrocarbon regions of the world. Kurdistan's oil and gas has become part of a portfolio of an increasing number of international oil companies, exploration companies, oil and gas, more than 50 stakeholders here from 23 countries. 4 significant oil fields are here in the region, already in production stage, with 6 more expected to come online by the end of the year. And current production capacity lies at about 300,000 barrels per day, rising to some 400,000 by the end of the year. And most of the crude production will be destined for export soon via pipelines. So export targets for crude, once the new pipeline network is operational, are 1 million barrels per day by the end of 2015 and 2 million barrels per day by 2020. And with gas, the policy priority is first to ensure that domestic need is met, and surplus will be available to export to Turkey and other international markets. And we expect to see the first export of gas in early 2016. Crucially, the foundations for a new sustainable partnership with our geographic neighbours are being laid. And Turkey, quite naturally, has been the quickest to embrace the new realities of our region. And it's nice to see my friend Murat here today. So, it has built a sustainable relationship of mutual interests with Turkey and the Kurdistan regional government based on trade, security, and energy cooperation. And the Kurdistan region in this context has proven that it can be a crucial partner to Turkey and indeed the broader international community. With Turkey and Europe's energy consumption expected to rise over the next few decades, it is clear that new and more diverse sources of energy are urgently required. So the KRG can contribute to the long-term gas supply needs of Turkey and Europe as a reliable alternative to the existing gas suppliers. And the new export infrastructure that is being built in this region will be a cost-effective and secure solution which will enable more of Iraq's oil and gas to reach the international market, and which will enable all citizens of Iraq to benefit from increased revenues. Because the revenue from the Kurdistan region oil sales will mean a boost of billions of dollars to Iraq's treasury. So success in the KRG will also mean Iraq's success. Ladies and gentlemen, since the removal of the dictatorship in 2003 and the passage into law of the federal constitution in 2005, the KRG has grasped the opportunity. And as many of you may know, KRG passed its own oil and gas law in 2007, which sets out the region's constitutional rights with respect to its oil and gas resources. And Kurdish politicians have been working with liberal partners in Baghdad, who are sadly few and far between, to try to secure the foundations of a new Iraq based on the federal constitution. And it's not always been easy, and there's been a long dispute with some in the national capital about the region's quest for economic sustainability. Yesterday you heard Prime Minister Nechevan Barzani say that his government were committed to continuing dialogue with the federal government in Baghdad to resolve all outstanding issues. But he was also adamant that Kurdistan would not back down on its constitutional rights. And with regard to oil and gas rights, let me explain something about what the Constitution says, because it is often cited but rarely clarified by the political class in Baghdad. And I firmly believe, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I think if you all go and read Iraq's constitution, it's a matter of applying a basic logic to the relevant sections on oil and gas. Export of oil and gas is not a monopoly of any single and centralized entity to be decided in Baghdad. Indeed, it's the duty of all Iraqis under the federal constitution to pursue export routes for oil and gas to secure the future of the country. So I'm going to quote to you a couple of lines from the Constitution, and this is not as some would like it to be, but as it actually is in the Constitution. And there are two provisions that give explicitly priority to the law of the regions over the federal government, except in those matters that are under exclusive federal authority. So Article 115 says that all powers not stipulated in the exclusive powers of the federal government belong to the authorities of the regions and the governorates. And with regard to other powers shared between the federal government and the regional government, priority shall be given to the law of the regions and governorates not organised in a dispute. And then Article 121 says that in case of a contradiction between federal legislation in respect to a matter outside the exclusive authorities of the federal government, the regional power shall have the right to amend the application of the national legislation within that region. So then we move on to Article 110, which says it outlines the federal exclusive authorities in the federal purview. There's 9. There's a foreign policy, national security and defence policy, fiscal and customs policy, etc. Now, the people who drafted the Constitution had the chance here to include oil and gas. They didn't. In fact, oil and gas is specifically excluded from the authorities of the federal region. Indeed, and it's against this background, I think, that the specific provisions of the Constitution on oil should be read, and that is Article 111. It's often cited by politicians in Baghdad. It begins, oil and gas are owned by all the people of Iraq. And this is cited to justify exclusive central government control. But they don't finish the sentence, because actually what the Constitution says is the full article. It says oil and gas are owned by all the people of Iraq in all the regions and governorates. So the regions and governorates are specifically included in the rights of the over oil and gas. But anyway, this article refers to ownership of the oil and gas in the ground. It doesn't say who administers it, who is responsible for managing the oil. So it is logical, given the two previous clauses that I have quoted, that it falls to the local entities. Now, when it comes to management of oil and gas, you have Article 1112, which says the federal government with, note the word with, the producing governorates and regional governments shall undertake the management of oil and gas extracted from present fields, provided that it distributes its revenues in a fair manner in proportion to the population distribution in all parts of the country. And this shall be regulated by a law. Well, here we're talking about present fields. Now, present fields are generally recognized to be those fields that were in commercial production when the Constitution was written in 2005. And in Kurdistan, there were no fields in commercial production in 2005. So this article actually, even if it did apply, would not even give exclusive federal role over the management, because first it talks about with, so it must gain the approval and work with the regions or the producing governorates to get the oil out of the ground. And secondly, it talks about extracted oil. So it's not the oil that's actually still in the ground, it's oil that's already been extracted and is in the process of being distributed, marketed, sold. And then we move on to the second bit of Article 1112, which talks about the joint federal power in respect to such oil and gas, which again will come back to the Kurdistan region's power by default. So it seems to me that the joint management, as I said, is limited to the oil and gas after it has been extracted, and on which basis the management of the extraction and production process itself falls outside the federal joint management power. I hope you're with me, but I suggest you go and read the Constitution yourself. But the clear inference, anyway, is that Article 112 covers oil and gas extracted from fields that were presently in production. There were none in the Kurdistan region. And so on that basis, all the fields not producing, developed, or even discovered, and the oil and gas has yet to be extracted from them, fall outside this article, and they fall under the Constitution to be managed by the relevant regional government alone.
Michael, we're starting to come to the close of the formal remarks.
Okay. So what we're talking about here is a commitment from the KRG to work with the federal government in Baghdad according to the Constitution. And I think the sort of pro-business policies that have been followed by the KRG state very, are sort of specifically designed to maximize the revenue for Iraq. And I think we can distinguish between the old Iraq, which is one of the sort of state-centralized, it's a sort of beer moth that just kind of moves along, and a modern new Iraq that the KRG, despite its problems, can bring into being. But I personally believe, and I've been first as a journalist and now as an advisor to the minister, that Iraq won't be able to survive for much longer on a diet of confrontation and coercion and chaos. And what it needs is some coordination and cooperation, and in short, common sense with regard to oil and gas. And that's a lot of C's, and my editors always used to tell me to avoid excessive alliteration, but that's all I could come up with right now. So ladies and gentlemen, sorry for taking your time, and please go and read the Constitution and make your own decisions. Thank you very much.
Louis, let me turn it over to you now. You've been looking very closely at these constitutional articles and amendments as well, and I know you have some thoughts of them. So maybe you can give us a view from Baghdad and and update us on thinking there.
Thanks. Thank you, Rachel. Since I've been asked to speak for Baghdad, I think I need to quadruple my time to maybe take it to 83%.
No, I can't let you do that, sorry.
Okay. Well, Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidati Sadati. Barzan Bayani Tambash, so I hope I got it right. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's been a great pleasure and honor for me to be here and participate in this excellent forum. And I can't be thankful enough to the American University, to the organizer of the forum, and personally to Dr. Barham Saleh for inviting me to this event. For me, it's kind of like mission accomplished today, and just 20 minutes before scribbling this key thoughts that I thought to share with you this morning, I bumped into a very close friend, Kak Bakhtiar Hashimi from Shoresh. And I don't know why the Shoresh clan sits over there with a Barham and Kurdistan. So he reminded me of quite an interesting experience back in 1980. And this is, by the way, just to clarify some misconception of, because I've been labeled in Baghdad, I'm very much closer to the Kurds. And I follow Kurds' agenda or something like that. But I'll tell the truth now. Back in 1980, my brother and my cousins were executed because of the past regime, and members of my family and I managed to flee the southern provinces, seeking refuge in Sulaimani. And we lived here for about 5 years. And it was during those 5 years I maintained a good, close relationship with the lovely people of Sulaimani and good friends. And it was back in 1986 that kind of like I departed from that lovely community. And it's interesting, after 28 years, I received this unpredicted reunion. So thank you very much again, Dr. Barham, for this coincidence to happen. Now back to the oil policy. I've been kind of like closely monitoring the development of the oil progress since since the referendum of the Constitution back in December 2005. And what's really struck me is that it was back in 2007, many politicians from both sides, specifically from the Kurdistan region, suggesting that in February 2007, there was some sort of an agreement. If there is no hydrocarbon law to be kind of agreed upon as consensus, on consensus basis, both parties will go separate way and develop their own policies. Now, in my humble opinion, and I could be wrong, this is not a vision of state building. This is kind of like my way or the highway. And if this is the case, the sentiment explains itself. There was no real intention to really agree upon a unanimous federal draft law. Though unfortunately, the experience of the past continued to haunt those in government. People in Baghdad have always, unfortunately, looked into federalism, and this is the big questions that never been answered clearly, or should I say honestly, the question of federalism. They always looked into federalism through the lens of centralism. And on the Kurdistan side, people, policymakers always looked into federalism through confederalism. And this kind of like created that clashes between the two opinions, and created a rather challenging stalemate that continued until this very moment and impacted on the institutional vacuum. What do I mean by the institutional vacuum? Yes, we do have a federal state, but this is ink on paper in the Constitution. This institutional vacuum led to the absence of a Supreme Court that defines the roles and has the rights to interpret the Constitution accordingly. We don't have a law for the Supreme Court. We don't have an institution for that. Same thing with the revenue sharing law, the second most important law. Without agreeing a revenue sharing law as enshrined in the Constitution as per Article 106, and agree on the distribution of that pie, one cannot agree to move on beyond that point. So this led to the vacuum of the Revenue Sharing Commission that handle the distribution of revenue at federal level. And when I say federal, I'm not talking Baghdad or central or things. Federal, we are a federal state. This third most important law is the hydrocarbon law. and this has nothing to do with the revenue sharing, it's to do with the management of the oil and gas sector. The management of the pie is how to maximize the size of the pie. And the vacuum of that law led to the absence of the Federal Oil and Gas Council, which is the federal institution of which that everyone should refer to as a federal regulator, where whether it's a federal government representative such as Ministry of Oil or Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Natural Resources as a producing regions, and the producing governorate as per the text of Article 112 basically should establish that institution. All these institutions need to be in place to have a federal state. Now, these institutions led into the vacuum of these institutions led into significant problem in Iraq that kept the sector kind of like handled or by people rather than institutions. If you Google the problem of oil sector in Iraq, I assure you that you will get the two names in Google, Dr. Ashti Hawrami and Dr. Hussein Shahristani. We have to move from, and I'm sure that both gentlemen kind of like really invested enough time to serve Iraq in different ways and based on their own understanding and based on their own capacity. But ladies and gentlemen, if we are really serious about building a state that serves beyond the current political elite, like generations, we need to remember we are a 7,000 years old country, a nation. If we want to, we really need to think of like the generations ahead, beyond our chronological age. People will die, parties will change, borders will move. So we need to build these institutions in place. Petty politics will continue to control the status quo unless we move into a really serious state building and nation building and institutional building. Failure to do so will destroy this country for good. But I would like to mention something. I'll have one more minute on top of that, please. There is an issue we have, and I just wanted to put in perspective what does it mean petty politics and how much that cost Iraq. According to the International Energy Agency, the low-cost scenario that Iraq loses for unserved sectors in the energy sectors because of the lack of energy supplies and feedstock and so on, it's around $40 billion US. If I would add to that about $5 to $6 billion US of the actual value of dry gas, plus the liquid, which is another 2-3 billion, and another the substitute of the how much crude going to power generation, the total of that annual losses we lose in terms of like opportunity around $55 billion. Do you know what's the 17% of KRG of this loss? $9.2 billion US. This is just about 1.5 or $2 billion less than your annual budget, ladies and gentlemen, in Kurdistan. If you do the maths over the past years, you will be losing more and more. And that petty politics will significantly impact the state development of Iraq. I would like to conclude with basically one point, if I may. Yesterday, I heard some comments about the Article 121 and 115. I totally agree with Michael on the rights of the region and so on. But all these two articles can be easily contradicted and by clashes by Article 130, which basically gives full authority to the federal government in Baghdad to basically utilize the central laws, because we all know according to that article, all central laws are valid until repealed by new federal laws. So we have a constitutional issue that needs to be resolved, and this could only be resolved by institution. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I heard that Iraq has no chance beyond the 2014, and this 2014 election is going to be the last chance, maybe the last chance for current politicians, but not the last chance for future generations. We did it 7,000 years ago. We're going to do it again. 10 political and military coups that this nation experienced over the past 90 years. Half a century of dictatorship, invasion, 12 years of sanctions, dictatorship, and so on. You name it. It did not divide Iraq. Petty politics will not divide Iraq. Thank you.
Okay. Bilal, we're going to turn to you, but as we come back for questions, Mike, I want you to think a little bit about the Article 130 in relation to what you've talked about, and Louay, to think also about whether Michael's articulation of the rights for Kurdistan makes sense in the Baghdad context. I know this is very controversial. We've got a lot of television cameras, and so the audience from there can't respond, but I think there'd be some debate about whether how this is being interpreted. But Bilal, let me come to you and talk a bit about governance.
Presentation here. Right, well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming to the Sulaimani Forum. My presentation will segue from Louay's. That's why I call it the, you've probably heard of the resource curse. Now I want to call the dispute between Iraq and Baghdad the dispute curse, and focus more on the harms that this struggle, this conflict between the KRG and the federal government has been causing Iraq. So I'll be alluding to the federalism clauses, and without much details because Michael did a great job looking through those. I will focus on the implications for this dispute for the industry itself and the progress and development of the energy industry in Iraq, and particularly in the KRG, and then the influences for the development of KRG's economy. And then I'll talk more about the influence and how policy in the KRG is shaped, and then if I may, I'll give you a to-do list for the KRG.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, promise. At the American University of Iraq Sulaimani, we have the Institute of Regional and International Studies. I'm proud and happy to be the fellow, and we've been doing some research about Iraq's and KRG's energy industries, and I want to just allude to the great work that the university is doing, including a report that will come out sometime in the near future. You'll get a print version and a PDF version sometime in the very near future. We also have courses dedicated to the energy industry, as well as an oil and gas club that students run. What we did for a couple of research events and focus groups that we got experts from the energy industry, from government, politicians, civil society, reporters, as well as academics to this university. And we looked at this relationship between government, the public, and the oil firms. And we looked at the actors as well as the relationships among them. Now, if you can see, the relation between the government and the public in Iraq is electoral, because this is an electoral transitioning democracy. The relation between oil firms and the public is through the corporate social responsibility, the kind of activities that companies perform in the areas that they operate. But the most important part, which is the source of dispute, is the relation between government and oil firms, which is organized by contracts, and hence the problems that the Constitution and understanding the Constitution has been creating. Now, the Constitution, unfortunately, is broken because it's a piece of document, and unless we agree on it and we agree what the meanings are, it's not going to work, it's not going to enforce itself. So this orphan constitution that yesterday was mentioned, it's not a problem of what is being meant by the articles, because the people who wrote it are still alive. But the problem is neither side wants to really hear. And that's the source of problem. And unfortunately, the interpretations have been diverging in record, drastically changing rather than getting closer and closer. So Howard's recommendation of coordination and cooperation was probably more likely in 2007 than it is right now. So one of our participants, after we discussed the Constitution and why it's not working and why the hydrocarbon law is missing, he basically said the Constitution doesn't work because it's not a real document, it's an aspirational document. It's not a document that can be implemented in the current realpolitik of Iraq. That's why it's so hard to translate it. That's why it's so hard to implement, because it's not a realistic one. Now, I'll leave it up to you to agree or disagree with that. Now, what are the implications of this conflict between KRG and Baghdad? Well, a couple of things. First, for the industry. It has elevated the risk. It is more risky for oil firms, for the international oil companies, to operate in Iraq because of this legal vacuum, because of this dispute, because of this personalized politics that Loay was referring to. It has also slowed down the progress. The reason that the projections have been lowered and they were deemed as very optimistic was because of this conflict. This is an atmosphere where policymaking and agreement is becoming increasingly difficult. Companies have, especially in the KRG, have been having a hard time to monetize the oils that they have found successfully. Oil has also been politicized. Oil is a political resource because it's controlled by states, and this is a fact all over the place. But in Iraq, it is even more politicized than other oil countries. And this is bad for the economy. This is bad for the negative for the progress of the region and the country. And of course, the biggest price that the industry is paying is the lack of transparency and the weak checks and balances that any energy industry needs in order to perform well and in order for that region, for that country, to avoid the harms associated with energy dependence, the so-called resource curse. Now, a final point here is the personalization. Loay mentioned how if you Google the Iraq oil, you'll be looking at two names. Now, I want to show that in a chart. What we did, we created social networks. And we asked questions to our audience from the different fields that I described earlier. 4 very basic questions. Who are the main actors? What kind of relationships exist among these actors? What are their goals? And how important are they? So we put that into an analytic software, and it gave us some charts. And this is one of them. This is about the shale gas. And if you can look at the center of the decision-making, you don't find a ministry, you don't find an institution, you find a gentleman's name. And that's just a visual example, and I can go into details. Every line represents a different kind of relationship. Now, this is another portrayal of the same chart, but this one in terms of importance. Not just in terms of centrality of how well connected that individual or that institution should be, but how important are they? And again, you see a gentleman's name on top of the list. On the Iraqi side, on the industry side, it just says the Shell board, which makes important decisions. So it seems that on the Iraqi side, individuals are in charge of decision-making, especially when they deal with institutions. And this is one of the causes of the problem that makes the functioning of the Iraqi governance system so challenging. Another example from the KRG, in this one, we were not asking questions about who influenced the Shell contract. Rather, we just said, who influences KRG's energy policy? And again, here you see this is data collected from experts, and it seems that here, individuals within one of the ruling parties, within the KDP, is mentioned as having the most influence in shaping KRG's energy policy. It's not the ministry, it's not a political party, it's not the government. It says it's people in a party. Now, this is a challenge, and the implications of this challenge are as follows for the country. We're losing oil revenues. Lu'ay put a figure on it, $55 billion in lost potential revenue. The dependence on oil has been deepening and deepening to very dangerous records. 70% of Iraq's budget is being spent in operations. This is a country that suffered decades of sanction and war. It needs investment, it needs rebuilding, but the country is spending money on salaries, on feeding people, on increasing consumerism. The cucumbers and tomatoes still keep coming from Syria despite their war. I find that very, very tragic. What's also getting a hit is rule of law and politicizing the budget. And of course, the Prime Minister was here yesterday referring to how the KRG is getting punished by Baghdad not releasing the funds. And of course, the focus has been on a blame game rather than on finding solutions. Everyone argues that I'm right and they are wrong. Okay, thank you very much. You're right, they are wrong. How can we move on from here? That's the discussion that's not taking place. The KRG has been adopting some tactics and some strategies. These are the phases, the elements of the KRG development of the energy policy. In the beginning, it was about the Constitution, making sure that the Constitution has those articles that Michael referred to that are pro-Kurdish. Phase 2 was to start building the industry. And of course, the approach was, as one of my interlocutors said, it's a smaller, faster, lighter approach. Get the small companies, sign PSCs that they like, and get to creating the industry and the ministry and pass the law as soon as possible. Now, of course, I'm showing you here how every act by the KRG created a negative reaction from Baghdad. The law that the KRG passed was called unconstitutional. The contracts that the KRG signed were called illegal. The companies that were working with the KRG were blacklisted, which is, and blacklisting in this case, based on political reasons rather than quality reasons, which reduces the market principles that the Constitution calls for. Therefore, the KRG has been learning to move away from signing papers and agreeing on verbal agreements into actually creating facts on the ground, shoot, and ask questions later. And that is the next phase, which is monetization and export. So for the KRG, here are some suggestions. Cap spending, find a mediator, and I'm looking forward to Murat if Turkey could be a mediator between KRG and Baghdad. And then for us, we'll keep working on these issues, we'll collect more data and produce more reports. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, let me turn it to you. Yesterday, the foreign minister said something very provocative. He talked about Turkey's growing energy demands, said Turkey needs energy. It would prefer that Iraq have an oil sharing agreement, that it has a revenue sharing agreement, but it will take energy from wherever it can get it. It's very provocative. I wonder if maybe that can frame some of your remarks in terms of talking about where how Turkey is engaging the energy sector here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here today before such a distinguished audience. This is my second time in the American University. I would like to thank Barham Bey very much. And I'm honored, Mr. Minister, to be in your presence here as well, with all the distinguished guests from Baghdad and everywhere. It's indeed a pleasure. Now, although we are talking about oil, 90% of the presentation was political, of course. Mm-hmm. Political. Energy policy is about politics, 85% about politics, actually.
Can you speak a little louder, Mr. Ambassador? Thank you.
Yes, I should do that. How should I do that? My point is, if I were ambassador, then it would have been easier, I suppose, to explain a certain position, whereas I'm not. I'm a retired ambassador now, but that gives me the freedom to, be able to criticize a few things as well. I hope I will be able to do that as well. Now, my dear friends, I have got to tell you that the energy policy that we have developed with Iraq in general and with the KRG did not start up with Turkey's energy needs in order to get the KRG oil or to do oil deals with Iraq in the first place. Foreign Minister Oshar Zebari, my dear friend Barham Bey, Kak Mesud, Kak Nejirvan, they would all testify to the fact that Turkey had to implement a comprehensive strategy in order to reach this point. And I want to tell you a few things as to how we did that, how we had to do that. You know, after 2003, our relations with the United States after the invasion, occupation, was at the bottom, as you know. And we didn't know how to really establish sound relations with Iraq in the first place. And when we looked at it, can you imagine the Turkish taboos in the past that President was Mamjelal, President Talabani, he is a Kurd. The foreign minister is a Kurd, you know, and the head of Joint Chiefs of Staff is a Kurd. Barham Bey, the deputy prime minister, is a Kurd. And, you know, we have terrible relations with the KRG. We don't have proper relations with the KRG. And, you know, the international community was looking at us from an angle, sort of asking Turkey to do something about its own Kurdish problem and also, you know, contribute to regional stability. And as a result of which we have crafted a very comprehensive strategy. That strategy involved, in the first place, to establish good relations with the KRG, to normalize those relations through building up confidence with the Kurds, not only with them, but with our friends in Baghdad. And you know, it was President Talabani as well as President Gül that we came up with the idea of this Strategic Cooperation Council. And at the beginning, yes, we had 6 or so ministers in the council, but there was no energy minister at the beginning, because our purpose was to develop good relations with Iraq and concurrently do the right things with the KRG so that the overall policy would work. And furthermore, you know, while looking at the KRG, you know, we have our Kurds in our country, and whatever we do right in this region has an impact on our own people. They are happy when we do something right, and you are happy when we do something right back at home for the Kurds as well. So this is the way we looked at it. At the beginning in Baghdad, believe me, after we had the energy, on top of trade cooperation, economic cooperation, agricultural cooperation, health cooperation, this and that, when we had energy cooperation, we saw that, you know, we sort of, the Turkish state oil company entered the tenders, and we got a few contracts which were technical service agreements. And after the Iranian example, you know, technical service agreements. And, you know, in the meantime, of course, KRG was trying to develop its own oil policy and coming up with other ideas like production sharing contracts. And, you know, as a dumb diplomat, I had to look into what these things were, and our energy professionals helped us a lot in that regard. But we came up with the following facts. We said, okay, the constitutional issues we understand, that is something that the Iraqi people, the Kurds and the Baghdadis, or the rest of Iraq is going to take care of. Let us hope that the, hydrocarbon law will pass. And we were, believe me, at the beginning naive enough to wait for the hydrocarbon law to pass. And, but in the meantime, we analyzed the contracts. We said, look, the Kurdish people are right in signing the PSCs because, you know, those are the undiscovered or unexplored fields, and therefore it requires technical skills on the part of the international oil companies, and they will be lured into doing things only if they are offered PSCs. Okay? We looked at the other fields in the south, and we said, well, Baghdad is right, I suppose, because these are producing fields. You know, they are already producing fields. So what they need is to stop the decline of the production and increase the recovery rate and so on and so forth. So what they are doing is also right. But we said in time, maybe Baghdad may decide also to use the same contract system in other fields, in unexplored parts as well. But this is, again, something that they should do. Then we focused on the revenue sharing thing. We said, hopefully something is going to be struck, a deal is going to be struck in the revenue sharing side of it, because it's a fact that, and the KRG is not denying the fact that the oil is all Iraqis, it belongs to all the people of Iraq. And regardless of whichever method you use, you're going to export this oil at the end of the day, which will be good for the people at large. We made this a very simple calculation. Allow me to tell you this from our point of view. I know that I have very little left, but let me tell you this. We made a calculation. We said, suppose that starting from 2007, you know, if there was an agreement between Baghdad and Erbil on the revenue sharing side of this thing. We said, suppose that we start with, starting from 2007, 60,000 barrels production daily by the IOCs in Erbil, in the KRG. Then 120,000, 200,000, 500,000. It went up to 750,000. And in 2013, it would have reached 1.5 million, according to our, you know, it was doable, all doable, and believe me, they were conservative estimates. And we calculated it on the basis of $90 per barrel at the time. Do you know, the overall revenue that would have been generated came up to 132 billion or something. Less the amount that the KRG was asking from Baghdad. You know, we presumed that the cost for the IOCs would be 15 billion, which the Baghdad government is not accepting, you know, on top of the budget thing. Let us take that out. It would have been 100 billion US dollars, you know, for the Baghdad budget, I would say, and 20 billion for Erbil. Now, what I'm saying is we should not allow the Iraqi people to lose out. And, you know, when I'm saying this, I'm also talking for the Kurds and for all our friends in Baghdad. So what we did was, we said, we have got to, and one development was also
we're coming
important.
to the end.
I know. The majors started to come in as well into the KRG. And we said, in view of our good relations with the KRG, let us move on. Let us move on with, you know, our bilateral sort of arrangements with the KRG. And we said it will also act as an incentive, I suppose. We hoped that it would also act as an incentive for Baghdad and KRG to come to terms with one another on the revenue sharing law. So this was our really need. And I'm telling you this because I was part of that strategy. I was involved in preparing that strategy. Now, when we come today,
I have to turn to questions now. We're out of time. So what I'd like to do right now, because we started a little late, I'd like to collect 3 questions as a group, and I'll bring them back up to the panel, and they can take and they can take last remarks. So let's go back to student back there. Yes, please. And I'm going to take all 3 together. Right here, please.
Hello, good morning. My name is Serge. I'm a student at the American University of Iraq. business major and international studies minor. I have some very basic questions which I believe everybody is thinking about right now in this room, at least those people who are interested in the case of oil. The first question is, the Constitution does say that the oil and the oil revenue should be used for the benefit of the Iraqi people, including the Kurds, the KRG. But my concern is that used? If not, why? If the Constitution says something what is not implemented, what's behind those people? There must be some kind of actors which are bigger than the Constitution. Then where is the rule of law in this country? The second question, I'm a single citizen of this country, and I have right to know how the oil revenue is collected in this country. I have to know how each and every contract is signed in this country. Nobody in this room, I believe, except the big politicians and those people who are responsible in the energy sector, now how the contracts are signed, and we actually don't know how much money we make out of oil. Why? You always hear the people, the politicians, and I would say Mr. Ashley Hiram, you're talking about the transparency of oil. What is transparency? If this process is transparent, then why we don't know how these things are happening?
Okay, I'm going to ask you to stop there because there's two questions. We have a question right over here. Thank you very much. We can get a mic over here.
Hello, good morning. My name is Farhad Aladin. Actually, I'd like to make a comment on a question to Ambassador Ozcelik. The issue of constitution was mentioned twice. The matter in Baghdad is not the wording of constitution as much as implementation of it. I think they're still working on the old laws rather than working according to constitution. My question to His Excellency is, do you think the Turkish policy will change if there was a change in Ankara and the Erdogan government is not winning? Because a lot of people may comment that the current Turkish policy is really Erdogan's policy, not Turkish policy. Thank you.
Terrific. One last question before we go back to the floor. Let's go to student right there. Yeah, you. Nope, right in front, white shirt. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rahi Rahbar. I received my... Hello. Okay. My name is Rahi Rahbar. I received my BA at AIS. And I have a question. 2 months ago, we did a presentation at the University of Amsterdam in Holland. And our presentation was about the oil curse. We came to a disappointing point. The point was that 47.5% of the oil makes a share of the general GDP of the KRG, which is a very, very high percentage. And if we compare to Venezuela, Ecuador, and Nigeria, it's much higher. And according to the statistics that we have, Venezuela and Nigeria is not considered an oil-blessed country, and we are worse than them. And for Michael Howard, what's the plan to tackle this oil curse? And if there's a plan, what's the plan? Thank you.
So let me go back to the panelists. We have some questions about transparency and how transparent is it, and I know that's come up quite a bit in terms of the recent contracts. We've heard a bit about the Constitution. Does Turkish policy change? And then to the last question. Maybe we can come back. Bilal, any thoughts? We'll come back in this order.
Sure. The question about how can oil translate to prosperity, I think that should be the key question that every Iraqi and KRG citizen should be asking. That's why one of the, on my to-do list for the KRG was to open up the oil debate to the public. There's been a lot of excellent and important achievements that the KRG and the Ministry of Natural Resources have done, but the KRG, and apologies, Michael, have had a very poor record communicating those. And when you are in the oil business, you are guilty until proven innocent. You need to be transparent. You need to talk about yourself. If not, then others will talk about you. I think we know more about the KRG from Mr. Shahristani than from Mr. Hawrami, because the amount of information, and of course it's all negative, that we hear that the KRG and the media reflects what's being said in Baghdad. And of course, when that is being repeated, and the effort on the KRG side to communicate the industry, with the pros and the cons. And I think that because the criticism is so big and there is so much unknown, therefore the assumption is negative, the perception is negative. That's why it's important to open up the debate to the public. Let people know what it means to be an oil-dependent country. Let the people know what is actually happening, so the people can back up this policy rather than the society itself can be critical or maybe in doubt of what is going on. And once we do this, once we have this, then the people will realize why it's important to invest more rather than consume more. Then people will back up the government's plan when, for example, yesterday the Prime Minister was talking about the economy on the media, that a lot of youth, when they graduate from the university, they want the government to give them a job. Well, that's true. That's a challenge. Maybe the people need to change the culture, but the government itself needs to also invest in a diversified economy. And that goes back to the issue of dependence. So yes, let's open up the debate and let's have a policy debate about how we can move forward toward prosperity as an oil-dependent region. Otherwise, putting the economy on autopilot is going to crash.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, there was a great question about the future of Turkish politics and how a change in government may change Turkey's view in terms of oil negotiations.
Well, I was expecting that anyways. Let me put it this way. Well, yes, there are going to be lots of changes, I suppose, in the political arena inside Turkey. At least some people expect that certain changes may take place.
They can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Look, let me tell you this. When we were implementing the strategy that I mentioned about the policy vis-a-vis the KRG, this was not the policy of just the Prime Minister, I'm telling you. This was a policy from bottom to up. I mean, it is, an institutional matter that when we discuss such important strategic issues, we do not just sit in one room, the Prime Minister, giving instructions to you all. We are a democracy still, I'm telling you. And the institutions just following it up automatically, because you have a huge public opinion as well, which has gone through some other sort of propaganda in the past as well. So we are talking about a policy change, a strategy change in Turkey, which the Turkish people understands very well, and the Turkish state understands very well, that it actually serves the mutual interests of Turkey as well as the KRG. So please know this. Whomever comes to power, this is my earnest belief, and I happen to know a little bit, about diplomacy plus a little bit of Turkish politics as well. I would like to assure you that this policy of Turkey enhancing its, relations with the KRG will not change. It is irreversible. It is irreversible. And mind you, please don't get sort of discouraged in the coming debates inside Turkey. We are now in an election period. In the local elections, the political parties may be accusing the AKP of a lot of things. They will accuse. This is politics, this is democracy, how it works in the election times. But don't, if a certain party criticizes Turkey-KRG relations, a certain party, let us say, just know that the Turkish state policy is not going to change. I want to repeat that. And this policy is irreversible. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We are together. Okay?
Thank you. Louis?
Thanks, Rachel. As much as I agree with Bilal on the various points, the great points that I very much reciprocate with, I do disagree on giving this matter in the leaving to the public debate with it. This is a very specialized matter. It has to be in the hand of experts. And when I say expert, not a drilling engineer, retired production technologist or whatever. No, constitutional expert and public policy expert to resolve this matter. And when I'm talking about expert, not necessarily Iraqis. We have the pious scholars, religious scholars, and Ayatollah, whatever, when they get health problem, they seek medical advice from foreign doctors, and they travel out to hospitals and whatever, and they entrust their body and health in the hand of people that they don't have common ground with. It goes very much well in everything in life. This needs a specialist, whether this specialist happened to be Iraqi, US, Britain, whatever. It's like a medical case, and we need to give that to expert when defining a draft law, defining the policy, and so on. As per the public debate and so on, they have the right to be kind of very much exposed as part of the transparency game and to know more about what is happening. Now, with regards to Turkey, I'm afraid Turkey, the best benefit Turkey that could ever do to Iraq is respecting Iraq's constitution and internal matter. In terms of helping Iraq, I think the best people that can help Iraq to move on forward and build that institutional, constitutional setting of federal Iraq are the Iraqis themselves, nothing else than the Iraqis themselves. Interfering I remember that back in 2006 and 7 and 8, during the Bush administration, ministers and so on, every single official from the US visiting Iraq, they started to talk about hydrocarbon law, draft law, whatever. And this is creating some type of a misunderstanding and misconception in Iraq, as if these laws and things drafted by foreigners instructed or dictated from outside Iraq. And this kind of this issue contributed to hinder the process of development. Now, with regards to some of the questions that are mentioned by the audience, let's translate these losses into numbers. I love numbers. We have a lost opportunity. Let's bring the gas issue, because I wrote the paper for Harvard and Rice University on the geopolitics of natural gas. I'm very surprised to hear from Baghdad, for example, over the past few years, until they recently started to revise their visions and thoughts about on gas. They were thinking of exporting gas to Europe through Nabucco pipeline. And an MOU was signed in 2010 suggesting that cooperation with the EU on potential export of gas. Then we have LNG export from the south and so on. Then we've heard today, 2016, we will be exporting gas. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not in the competition of exporting gas. According to the Constitution, Article 112, Clause 2, we need to identify the maximum benefit. We identify basically the market method, the best market method to secure netback for the Iraqi people. And the best way to do that through using the economic multipliers. Gas is an economic multiplier. 82% of Iraq gas is associated with oil. We can only produce gas as much as we produce oil, unless we maximize the exploration on dry gas or free gas. What does this gas mean? It means at least 95% of its all fuel stock, feedstock goes into powering power stations. How much that costing Iraq? $55 billion US, as I just mentioned, of which the KRG is losing 9.2 billion a year. 9.2 billion a year of that lost opportunity, while petty politics negotiating pennies. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, Baghdad has a legal standing as much as the KRG has on Article 121 and 115.
Wait, this has to be the last
And this one is the Article 130. And the last point I wanted to mention, in 2004, Iraq budget was 19 billion US dollars. Today is 151 billion US dollars, 7.5 folds. The population did not grow 7.5 folds, but the operational expenditure continued to be 70%. The deficit continued to be close to 20%, and we don't have enough cash for the investment portfolio. And instead, the government started to think that whatever money we make, we have to put it in the bucket of the budget. No, this equation should be flipped. Administration of the government should not be turning the state into a gigantic social security department where spending everything on the nation on the payroll. Iraq should not put 8 million people on the payroll. Iraq should spend about 30% of expenditure budget maximum. If there is a problem on employment, please don't put it as mass unemployment in the government. But on the 70%, this should be put on investment portfolios as it used to be during the monarchy time. And with this, I rest my case.
Thank you. Michael, you want last comments from you, please? There's a lot on the floor, so.
Well, just first of all, I think it's a great mistake to reduce the debate that is going on in Iraq right now about management of oil and gas to personalities. These are policy issues that go right to the heart of the way Iraq will be managed as a country in the future. And so I just disagree with, I don't think you're going to get very far in understanding various policy options if personalities come into it. The policy of the KRG has been supported it's not just the creation of one man, it's been supported by successive prime ministers. When Dr. Barham was prime minister, he supported that, Nejavan Barzani. It's supported now across the political spectrum. Guran are pretty much on board, I believe. The PUK and the KB. This is a national issue for Kurdistan, and it's a national issue for Iraq. The two should come together. So just please don't think, if you remove personalities that everything will be okay, because it won't.
No, I just mentioned that it gives the perception. We did not say whether Shahristani or Hawrami kind of controlling as a one-man show policy. It gives perception. And this is kind of like when assessing, and Bilal beautifully demonstrated that in a scientific way.
Sorry. As regards transparency, well, there are several layers to transparency. There's transparency of contract. In that sense, when Dr. Barham was Prime Minister, he handed over the majority of PSCs to Parliament in Kurdistan, which is the legally authorized body to review the... and they're also published online, which was a historic first. In terms of how a contract is negotiated and signed, they are done by the people who are professional negotiators. And I think Kurdistan has negotiated some excellent PSCs, which are actually going to benefit the people. If you go into one of the unique factors, actually, if we're also going to talk about supporting the how revenue generated is going to help the people, is that the Kurdistan PSC contains within it production sharing bonuses. So when a company discovers oil, a certain percentage of their profit oil will go into a capacity building fund, which will use to fund major social infrastructure. Also, when a company signs a contract, they also are expected to put forward a capacity building bonus up front. This is not cost recoverable. And already some $2.5 billion have been spent on infrastructure projects. This university that you're sitting in today has benefited from that program. And if you want to find out exactly how much has been spent on the capacity building projects, you can go to the, it's already been published, it was aired before the last Kurdistan elections on TV, and you can also find it on the MNR website, which is in both Kurdish and English. Yes, we can always become more transparent, and we're working towards that. Again, following initiative by Dr. Barham, Iraq has signed up to join the EITI process, the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. And last year, Kurdistan was excluded from that process until last year, and we took part. The report eventually was published after a great deal of political maneuvering by certain officials in Baghdad. But you can go to the EITI chapter and you can see revenues. It's always 2 years behind, but you can begin to follow. Unfortunately, because of our unfortunate experience with EITI, this year we are commissioning an independent, reputable third party to put together a complete revenue and production report. So you'll be able to match how much revenue is created, how many barrels of oil are created, gas, etc., and you can match it to the revenues. Okay?
We're desperately out of time.
So the EITI is membership on EITI is at a state level, not at a regional level. So it's not a matter of exclusion; it's a matter of you need to integrate it as part of it.
In the first EITI report in 2009, it was 79 pages long. This was a report that was a year, I think 2009, when Kurdistan exported 5 million barrels of oil, and the EITI completely ignored it.
Michael, I'm going to have to make that the last point. There's a lot of questions. You can catch our panelists outside, and unfortunately I'm going to have to call this to a close. Please join me in thanking the panelists for a conversation today.
Before you all go away, we have a 10-minute break coming up here, and we'll start at 11:50. A few other announcements. After the next panel on ethno-sectarianism, there will be the lunch at 12:45, but we also have the honor of having the Italian ambassador, Ambassador Marotti, with us. A few moments, please. Okay, and so we'll be having a ceremony for the opening of our newest building, the Italian Pavilion. It was actually basically thanks to a generous donation by the Ministry of Water Resources. So a big thank you to them, and you can join us for that ceremony during the lunchtime. Thank you.